This is Hartford Whaler Nation. Welcome to Whaler Nation TV, and today we're on location at Salute Restaurant in downtown Hartford, 100 Trouble Street. We have Peter Hindle from theexaminer.com and my co-host, and Jim Cosgrove, the general manager and partner of Salute Restaurant. Jim, thank you so much for having us in. It's a great place. I've been down here for a great dinner. Peter, we had a great trip yesterday down to Long Island.
Yes, we did.
We'll talk about that after in the show. But Jim, what do you remember about the Whalers? And obviously it's Whaler Nation TV. We have a great audience here today, and we appreciate everyone coming out. What is one thing that if you could bring back right now about the Whalers and what they did for downtown, what would that be?
Probably the energy level that was created on the day of a game. It kept people in the city. Let's say you worked from 9 to 4. You had a reason to stay in town. Not that there aren't still reasons to stay in town now, but it had an easy reason. Wives would come down, meet their husbands, go out for dinner, then go to the Whalers game. You saw the players walking around town. We give the Wolfpack a lot of credit. It's great to still have the Wolfpack in town. There was a different energy when the Whalers were in town. Every Wednesday night, every Saturday night, you knew there was a game.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you were from out of town, you had something to do then in town.
Mm-hmm.
And this town supported that team tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
I started working downtown back in 1980, and we had just joined the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredible. Again, not to undo what the Wolfpack had done. It's nice
Sure.
to meet the kids that play in the Wolfpack, but one of the first guys I met was Gordie Howe. That's Gordie Howe.
That's right, Mr. Hockey.
I remember, afternoons at Chuck's, when the guys after their morning skate would come in for lunch, and you're sitting there, talking with Ronnie Francis, Kevin Deneen, and these are guys you watch on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the hometown celebrities, and like we discussed off camera earlier, it was about what they brought to the community.
Yeah.
It wasn't just guys walking down the street or just they play hockey. No, they were in the community. They lived close to the area, so they were, like you said, the families would come down and meet them too. And you got to know their families as well.
Exactly. There was a longevity. I know today, especially in professional sports, there's a big turnover. But back in those days, if a guy came to play, he was there for years.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't mean to keep bringing up the Wolfpack. They're
Sure.
great kids, but you meet them for a couple years, they're gone.
Sure.
These guys, you got to know them. You got to become friends with them. After the games, they were out around town.
Mm-hmm.
Very approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Hartford's a small market town, but it gave us a big city feel.
And when you had those Saturday nights, and Pete, we've talked about this before, whether it was, Frank Sinatra back in the day at the Civic Center, you had, all the concerts, all the big concerts,
Right.
Billy Joel, Elton John, those were big shows, and I'm sure working at, where you worked, Chuck's, Margaritaville, you got to see all those people after the shows. Gaetano's, another staple in the Civic Center back in the day, was another one that everyone went for a great meal and to meet your friends.
Right. And I can tell you that you bring up a good point with the Wolfpack, because I follow the players on Twitter, and they say, "What do you want to do today?" And they salute, and they're coming down to the restaurant, and they would sit at the bar. And now those guys that I remember seeing there, and I was thinking, wow, the players come here, but they're already gone. When you have the NHL, you have players that they put roots into the community. They have kids in school. They get involved in communities. That is kind of lacking in Hartford. You can kind of feel that. But it was such a great time to have that NHL kind of power behind the city.
Absolutely.
We're hopeful that it can happen again.
One of the biggest compliments a lot of the players would always pay this area was, while we were one of the smaller markets in the NHL or in any major sports
Right.
League, they loved the area. A lot of the guys said one of the good things about coming to Hartford was it was a great area to bring up kids. You could live right outside the city and come right into town anytime you wanted to. And I think a lot of the players, even after they left Hartford, stayed in Hartford.
Or come back to Hartford. Now, Joel Quinville still has family in the area. Kevin Deneen still has.
Well, a lot very local girls.
Right.
But that was one of the biggest draws for a lot of the players. They really liked the area.
Yeah.
And when you think back in your days at Chuck's and at Margaritaville, we've talked before about the Quebec series, and when they swept Quebec in 3 games. I was there as a high school kid, and I remember what it was like going out in the streets of Hartford. All you guys, right? Am I right? Yeah. You go out there and you saw everyone jumping in the streets. It was like we won the Stanley Cup, and it was only the first round of the playoffs, but it was a huge accomplishment for the Whalers. Right. And when you look back and you say, what could have been and what can it be now? What sticks out in your mind, especially with the Nordiques playoff series after that? Everyone's gone, the Whalers coming to your place, and that was Chuck's at the time, right? Yeah.
There were a handful of events, I think, in this city that you can really remember that really generated so much activity. One is, when the Whalers played Quebec, when they swept Quebec, and they won Game 3, I think it was back here.
Yes, correct.
Back here. It was incredible. And, afterwards, we're talking like 2 o'clock in the morning. There's still, besides the players were all floating around still. Because these are young guys, and their energy level, they were going crazy.
Yeah.
The fans were incensed. They were going crazy. It was nuts. And right up until, Game 6, when we played Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
And Kevin Deneen scores the game and scores the goal in overtime.
Oh, absolutely.
The dream was alive. Unfortunately, Game 7 didn't, but just incredible.
But that night was just a powder keg. The Civic Center, I got 2 tickets from Dana Merzen, and I was sitting, at the time it was 323, right up behind the net. And I remember I stopped clapping, and you could feel the place shake. And I said, to physically feel the Civic Center shake with the excitement, the song, everyone jumping around you, you were together. And to bring that passion back as Whaler fans is so important. And you touched on it. Everyone's out in the streets, and they're
we all liked each other.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now you have
throw the cops under the bus, but nobody was out there giving you a hard time.
Nope.
And that, by the same token, nobody was out there causing any
No.
trouble.
Right.
The only fun thing was watching the fireworks go off on the Sheridan garage. They're going up in the air, and you're like, oh my God, this is great.
Jim, and everything you've seen, throughout your time in Hartford, do you have one fond memory that sticks out in your head when you think about the Whalers or the people or the fans or?
Just some of the people that I met.
Yeah.
Incredible things. I remember coming out after closing time one night, coming out and going out to the bar. Not that they were supposed to be there. All of a sudden, meeting Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
And guys like that. Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
Mark Messier.
Seen them all. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
From a game point, from being downtown so many years, it was fantastic. The restaurants that I ran were right in the XL Center, Civic Center.
Yep.
And so you could go in and catch the third period anytime you wanted to.
Yeah.
The overtime. Kevin Deneen's goal in Game 6.
Yeah.
To me, probably sticks out as much
Oh,
as
yeah.
any.
I was going to say you because I just read recently that you had 4 Seattle Seahawks come here to dine here, and it was kind of like that feel, like you had. These were professional athletes coming.
What I told the kids that work for me is that what was nice about meeting the 4 guys from Seattle the other day, and this goes back to when I first started working downtown, meeting the hockey players. It reinforced your belief in professional athletes. Not every guy's a prima donna.
Right.
These 4 guys from the Seahawks couldn't have been nicer. Polite, treated my staff really well, but just really, really nice guys.
Yeah.
They weren't like the guys you read about in the news.
Yeah.
And the hockey guys were just the same way.
Yeah.
They were very down to earth. I remember talking about Red Sox baseball with Dave Tippett and Kevin Deneen for hours.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. They were just normal guys who were really good at what they did.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. You could walk down the street and say hi, shake hands. You didn't want to bother them because they're on their off time or whatever, but they took the time to talk to you. And so much with the charities. We talked about the Whalers Booster Club is represented here, and they do so much with the charities. And that was something that the Whalers did as well when it came to the Yukon Children's Cancer Fund and a host of all the other ones that they took part in. You saw them out in the hospitals, just like the Wolfpack. They do it on a much smaller level, but the Whalers were always out in the community, and that was another thing that kept them so intimate with us, the fans.
Right.
Another aspect, just the coaches were visible, The owners were visible. Howard Baldwin, really nice guy. Richard Gordon, I don't know what people thought of him, but I got along with Richard Gordon great. What a nice guy. He would come in and say hello to people. And again, I think we talked one day about the Packers and how the Packers do things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You don't appreciate things until they're gone, but you realize now, you know, what a nice hometown feel we had here.
It is, and you know, when Howard said it on our show, he talked about the Whalers being the Green Bay of the NHL. I told you this earlier. We had someone from Fairbanks, Alaska, email us and say, if you sell stock for the Whalers, I'll buy 5 shares for the Whalers.
Right.
And you remember you brought up to me, you're like, some guy from Alaska wants to buy stock in the Whalers. I said, well, he has to wait till we actually get a team. But I thought it was neat that someone reached out to us and emailed us from. I mean, you got them from all over the country. Some of your emails.
It's pretty impressive. It's actually you know, anywhere we go, no matter what city or any. People just something about that brand they love. We don't really ever get any negative feedback at all. It's just it's just everywhere, and every time you see it, like we were just outside your restaurant a couple minutes before the show, and these 2 people walked by and said, what's going on? And they said, we're filming a TV show about the Whalers, and boom, they started talking about their memories and what they remembered, and they want a team back, and they'd like it.
That's the fun thing. Everyone has one thing that they remember. Whether it's the Kevin Dineen goal, the playoffs against Quebec. Marching in the parade, the Booster Club marches every year in the St. Patty's Day parade, and it's like finding your lost long friends. They're coming back from wherever they're coming from just to see the Whalers, and that's the fun part about it. We all have that connection with the logo, the name, the brass bonanza, whatever it may be. Now the '86 All-Star game that was in Hartford, you remember that?
Oh yeah.
And how was that for the city? I didn't have a chance to go and see the game because obviously you couldn't get there because it was sold out. What do you remember about
3 days of just having guys. I mean,
everyone you can think of, huh?
Middle of the afternoon, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you get Ray Bork sitting at the bar having lunch. Just incredible, and guys you could talk to. They didn't try to wave you off.
What about foot traffic? When you have an NHL club, and not that I'm comparing the two, but from then to now, foot traffic in Hartford. When I worked downtown back in the '80s, the Civic Center Mall was crowded because it had the stores in there. You get your lunch at On a Roll. You remember On a Roll restaurant? The little place. I get a hot dog every day there. What do you see different? And a lot of things have changed because a lot of businesses have come and gone. What do you see different, and what can be improved, do you think, when it comes to the downtown area with foot traffic and that type of thing?
Well, back in the heyday, back in the '80s, Jerry, I mean, in the afternoon at lunchtime, there were people all over the place. And good weather, bad weather, people were walking around. It was a different time, too. The economy was a little different back in the '80s. One of the issues we run into nowadays is all the vacant buildings. And there are people that want to bring businesses into Hartford, but why do we want to overcharge them just to try and start a business?
Right.
Back in those days, they gave you a chance to start a business in Hartford without breaking the bank right away. And again, that in the afternoons you did your shopping at lunchtime, which unfortunately now you can't do in downtown. Or you went out for lunch. And again, after work, you got out of work at 4 o'clock. You stayed in the city. One of the things that we have now, which I never even realized until we opened about 4 years ago, is how many people live in this city. And how many of the people that live in this city support this city. There's such a good nucleus of people, whether old or young, that live in this town, that want to support this town.
So it's almost like a flip-flop. We had all the businesses back in the '80s, but not a lot of residency. Now we have a lot of residency and not a lot of businesses, or we need more businesses. So you see a turnaround, and I remember when they started really pushing a lot of residency, it was when we had all the businesses, but nothing really jumped off. And now you have a lot of residency. Hartford 21's filled. You have Bushnell Towers down here. We've met some great people from the Bushnell Park Foundation who really celebrates the dwellers in downtown. Some great people there. David Panagor, nice guy. People there. And you talk about the people that live downtown, and now we have that flip-flop. And hopefully with that new resurgence of people downtown, they're going to start bringing some more businesses.
Well, we were talking earlier. I mean, there's such a big nucleus of younger people that even not only live downtown but work downtown. And it's easy to get them to stay downtown. But and again, we were talking earlier, none of these kids were alive or not alive, but
they were young.
5 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Back in town. and that you hope that one day they get to experience what we did.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and
Yeah.
the pride that you have. I mean, when we were a game away from getting to the Stanley Cup Finals, or getting to the semifinals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next year we had the best record in hockey.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And then you saw that attendance climb, and you're
Right.
just like, and we always talk about the fans because we do have very fickle fans in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And if you're not a winner, nobody's coming.
Yeah.
But you're winning, everyone's busting down the doors, and
Yeah,
you're like,
right.
there's no in between here.
Yeah, there is.
We've seen it with UConn. UConn used to sell out Rentschler when they were playing all these big teams, and then all of a sudden they're not very good, and nobody's going to the game anymore.
Right.
So we do have fickle fans. We have to sell the product
Yeah.
to get them there.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the Whalers and their climb
Right.
in the playoffs, and then the next year
Yeah.
I worked for the Whalers, 87, 88, and it was great because everyone was calling you for season tickets.
Right.
It was very simple to be successful. And thank God for commission.
And I read something that someone wrote about you, and they were talking about how they asked if when you opened Salute if your clientele was going to change, and I think you said something along the lines like, even though restaurants are not really that far apart, certain people stick to certain areas in Hartford, and I think something along bringing more residency into the city. Accompanied with an NHL team, people will actually start walking a couple more blocks to go places like that. But it's weird to have a city where just a couple of blocks, people will stay in this area or stay in that. Yeah, it does.
Territorialize that area. That's their comfort zone.
And it's probably not the best thing for Hartford because you want everyone to go everywhere like they do in other cities.
Well, when you have a lot of people downtown and you can't get in one restaurant, you're going to have to go to another one.
Right,
so
right.
if you infuse the
Right.
whole population down here with people, they're going to go to different restaurants. They're going to be
right.
forced to go to different restaurants.
Yeah.
So the word Salute, where did it come from? How did you get Salute for this restaurant?
My oldest daughter looked up the word. She said, "Dad, because again, I've been in the city for 30 years."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Dad, you know everybody in the city.
Mhm.
People walk in the door, you try to," and my staff has learned that too. We try to learn your names. So when you walk in the door, we're not quiet people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll yell across the bar, I'll yell your name. Hey, Jerry, how are you? Because when you walk in the door here, I want you feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a crappy day, I want to see if we can make it better. And she said, "Dad, you can't call the place Cheers.
You're right.
Call it Salute."
Oh, nice.
In Italian, Cheers.
Oh, absolutely.
Salute in Italian means Cheers.
Absolutely. That's great.
Yeah.
And
Congratulations also on
exactly.
being the 2013 restaurateur of the Connecticut Restaurant Association. That's just a great place.
Unfortunately, Peter, Connecticut's a small state.
A very humble man here.
But, yeah, it was nice. All the
Oh,
publicity was
fantastic.
great, and what we try and teach the people that work for me and all the other people around town is that if you just work hard, you
Yeah.
can get ahead in life.
Absolutely.
You ain't got to climb over anybody to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. That's
I
a good
tell
place.
you, the first time I came down here, same thing. Welcome. How you doing? What's going on? Yeah, it's like, wow, all right. My wife and my son, we had dinner here. It was a great dinner. I think when you look at coming into a new place, you have to see what's on the menu, what the atmosphere is like. You were very busy that night. It was great, but the service was good. The food was great. And, it was done really efficiently. So you weren't here all night, but you didn't mind just sticking around a little longer, enjoying another glass of wine or whatever. It was nice. It was a nice, comfortable setting.
A lot of those skills, Jerry, they were picked up from the days when the Whalers were in town because you learned the season ticket holders.
Mm-hmm.
You learned their names.
Yep.
The guys you're going to see them like 40 nights out of the year.
Mhm.
And, they became your friends.
Sure. Yeah, and that's what they were.
And you
back
learn
then.
to appreciate how much, what they did to
Mhm.
go to these games. I remember the last 2 years the Whalers were in town where they
Mhm.
kept on putting minimums on season tickets.
Oh, yeah.
I know guys that had to get second jobs
Mm-hmm.
just to keep their season tickets because they didn't want to see what happened.
Yeah.
And that's a credit to